Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Garden of Sports Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Gardner, alongside my brother, Zach.
Yo, what's going on, everybody?
And our weekly guest, Kyle Forsythe.
Welcome to Week 13.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, we're back after a week off for Thanksgiving. Hope everyone had a good one, and we're ready to give you our top moves of the week here.
I know I did.
Hell yeah.
All
right.
Had a couple cocktails, had some turkey, some lasagna. It was good.
Yeah, we had lasagna.
Ooh.
It was different combo there.
Different. An
It's down
Italian
for some
Thanksgiving.
lasagna, though.
Oh
Italian
my
Thanksgiving.
God. All right, but without further ado, we'll go into our 3x3x3.
Yes. So, starting her off here, I got Zay Jones. But of course, we got
There it was. Glory hole.
got our weekly
Jerry Jones.
weekly Jerry Jones talk. So there we go. All right. So Zay Jones, wide receiver, Jacksonville. He's 31.4% rostered on ESPN. Had a big week this week against Baltimore. Went 11 of 14. So 11 receptions on 14 targets for 145 yards and a 2-point conversion and 22 points and a half-point PPR. So had a really nice week, and he's kind of looking good with Trevor Lawrence kind of the last like 3 weeks looking pretty good. So kind of him and Lawrence, really looking pretty good together. And that offense is kind of doing some scoring right now. The last 2 games against Kansas City and Baltimore, 10.8 and 22 points, average of 12 targets between those games. Next up, he's got Detroit, who entered Week 12, giving up the 5th most fantasy points to wide receivers. Their defense is doggy doo-doo. So, yeah, that should be a good little matchup for Zay Jones. So, yeah, definitely be scooping him up. This is a pretty good one this late in the year, I think. Just that Jacksonville offense finally getting going.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so you definitely want to get a little piece of that.
He's been floating around for a couple weeks now. I know we talked about him maybe a month ago.
Yeah, we definitely did. I remember, and I think I brought him up that same week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and now you got 2 games against 2 pretty darn good defenses, especially Baltimore. But
yeah.
I mean, you got Detroit coming up next week, and I think that's a great matchup, especially if you need a guy. Hopefully, especially if you're looking for a playoff push. I mean, that's what we're basically looking at right now is trying to win the last few games. If you're on the button of possibly being out of the playoffs, this could be a guy that may put you over the edge, especially next week.
Hell yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, definitely.
My number one guy off the board, Treylon Burks, 37.5% rostered. He had 6 targets for 70 yards, and his touchdown came from the Derrick Henry fumble in the end zone. So I don't know if you really
that was a goofy looking highlight.
count that, but yeah, that's his first ever touchdown as a rookie, and 181 yards in the past 2 games. So I think he's heating
Thanks,
up.
Derek. I'll just grab this here. Yeah, thank you.
Oh my God. And where was I here? Yep, 181 yards, and he's got a tough matchup next week, so I was a little hesitant on putting him on here, but I think in the long run, since he is like their first round pick, they're going to be using him a lot more the rest of the season.
Yeah, I agree. He's looking like their number one the last couple of weeks. He's finally like kind of breaking out a little bit. But on the Tennessee Titans offense, him being the number one receiver it's not really a super great endorsement. Because they're big. All they do is run the ball. They don't throw it that often. But still, him being like their main kind of Tannehill's like go-to guy right now, definitely worth a pickup. That 37.5%. I imagine that's going to go way up by next week because you're kind of really looking for guys at this point in the year, and so he's definitely going to get scooped up. So I definitely think he's one of the top ones for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. Sure. I agree. I have another wide receiver as my number one. I am going once again with Darius Slayton, who we've talked about a lot on here. Still only 37.1% owned according to ESPN. He had another great game. I say good game, not a great game, but a good game. Had 3 receptions on 6 targets for 63 yards, 7.8 points and half PPR. He would have had a touchdown, like a 20-yard touchdown, had it not gotten called back for a holding penalty on the offensive line. Otherwise, he would have been in double digits for the 4th time in 6 games. He continues to be the number 1 throwing option on this New York Giants offense. Their next opponent is Washington, who the secondary is okay. They're not horrible, but they're also not great. I think that definitely even against Dallas, he was able to still get 63 yards and 6 targets. So I think that he's definitely a really good one to pick up. In the past 5 games, he's been 13.3, 9.1, 17.0, 11.1, and 7.8. I think this is a guy that consistently produces week to week. This is a guy that you need to pick up if you're pushing for the playoffs.
There you go.
Yeah, I think I've actually had him on the graphic the past 3 weeks, so
Yeah,
we've been pushing him.
He definitely should. I mean, there's a reason we keep pushing him. He is one of the better options out there, and I can't believe he's still available that much.
Yeah, I guess people still aren't sold on Daniel Jones, but
I mean, are any of us really? I mean, that's like the big thing.
yeah.
Are you?
Isn't he a top 10 quarterback?
Do you think that he's going to hold that forever? I'm waiting for him to fall off the cliff.
No, he's top 12. But he had a bye week. He was top 10 before week 9. I remember that.
I think he's future. I think he's a future MVP.
Whoa. Okay. That's a hot take, man. I didn't realize this was hot takes. I thought this was Garden of Sports football. Jesus.
Oh my fuck God.
I think the whole offense is playing really well. Barkley's running it really well. I think that Jones is playing really, really well with just the way that they are. I think that Darius Slayton being that number 1 target, I think needs to be picked up. If he's available in your league, this is easily, absolutely a waiver ad.
Oh, definitely.
Sure.
Yeah, everybody go pick up Darius Slayton. Come on.
Sure.
It's up to you guys to have us stop talking about him, okay?
You're sitting here in his game, just go pick him up already.
Get him above 50, yeah.
Give him above 50 when we stop talking about him.
All right, my second guy here, Kyren Williams. Running back, Los Angeles Rams, 19.4% owned, ESPN. Back up to Cam Akers, but had more yards. Had 11 rushes for 35 yards, plus 3 receptions for 25 yards. 7.8 points total in a half-point PPR league. Could continue to have a big input from an offense that doesn't have a lot going for it. That's the understatement of the year. Right now, I mean, they got to back up everywhere you look. Like back up here, back up there, back up everywhere. That's the Rams. Definite upside grab for fantasy managers that want to stash a little upside backup bench guy for the playoffs. So, yeah, Kyren Williams. Be on the lookout for him if you really need a running back.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a 12-team grab. Maybe not 10 teams quite yet, but add him to the watch list. But deeper league for sure.
The only reason he's even relevant at all is because Henderson got waived by the Rams, which is still a decision that I can't quite understand. I haven't seen anything. Zach, do you know of anything that like he did? Was there like a lawsuit? Is he under arrest or something? Because it just out of nowhere just got dropped.
It's very weird, but I mean, it just seems like for whatever reason they haven't liked him for a while. They couldn't wait to get Cam Akers 6 months off an ACL back in there last year going into the playoffs. I don't know what it is. There's something about Henderson that they just don't like. I don't really understand because he usually does good when he's out there.
Totally. Well,
so,
now
he's
a member of Jacksonville now. So
yeah, okay, yeah. So they'll
a little too late for the Rams. They should have traded him, is what they should have done. They probably could have, even though it's past the deadline, so you're screwed anyway. But you just let him walk, and now he just for free went to another team.
Yeah, it's very strange for sure. I don't really get it. The NFL is weird sometimes.
That is the understatement, I think, of the year for sure.
Yeah.
Who do you got next, Jake?
Listen, guys, I have another running back, Gus Edwards.
Oh,
40%
very
rostered.
nice.
We've talked about him. This is another guy we've talked about a lot, but he dropped down. He did go above 50 at one point. I think the first week he returned, week 7. Then re-injured himself. People dropped him. He got down here to 40%. Came back here in Week 12 against Jacksonville, 16 carries for 52 yards and a touchdown. And I think that's kind of what he is and what we've said he is a touchdown back on a good offense. So he's worthy of a grab and 40% rostered, starting running back. And, touchdown back. That makes him a little Garrett Blunt candidate.
Roll another blunt.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Can't understand like how. I mean, I can't understand, but like it's such a frustrating offense and such a frustrating team to watch Baltimore this year. Normally they just flow real easy on offense. I feel like they just struggling. So I mean, especially when he's struggling to throw down through the air and like the passing game just isn't working, they're going to go to Gus on the ground, especially near the goal line. They're just going to give it to him and just let him truck over people, and because they got to score points. They're still in the playoffs right now, but with how some of these AFC teams are playing, it could possibly go out to fringe, So I think it's interesting.
Yeah, it definitely is. I don't know if the league's kind of figured out like the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. I don't know if that's just they're kind of a one-trick pony and that one trick's been kind of figured out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It just seems like whenever you get halfway through the year to the end of the year, and into the playoffs, it seems like the Baltimore always struggles on offense.
Sure.
So, yeah, definitely Gus Edwards being healthy is a big thing.
3 touchdowns in the 3 games he's been in, and 3 games he's been in.
Yeah, definitely helps them because they run the ball. That's their thing. And they have a bunch of guys that can do it when they're all healthy. It works. When they got Dobbins and Edwards all out there, all their guys, they run the ball very well, and that's their bread and butter. Lamar Jackson's still figuring out the passing game. I still think they could use a good wide receiver or two, like, actual 1s and 2s, besides just the Mark Andrews show.
Sure.
The injured, the injured Mark Andrews.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, if they'll limp into the playoffs, but I don't know if that they're going to figure something out here the rest of the way.
I will say, spoiler alert, Mark Andrews is not on our injury segment this episode, which is crazy.
Wow, that is crazy.
First time all year. No, my next guy that I have is DeAndre Carter, wide receiver for the Los Angeles Chargers. Only 5.6% rostered according to ESPN. Coming off of a really big game, went 7 for 10 for 73 yards and a touchdown for a total of 16.8 points in half PPR. This was with Keenan Allen active and in the lineup. Obviously, we know that Mike Williams got injured during that game. He was out with this, I think, is the same ankle that he already had injured. Am I correct, or is it the other ankle now?
Yeah, it was the same one.
Same one, right? Okay. So we already know that Mike Williams was held out for a long time because of this. If he re-injured it, you got to imagine that he's probably not going to be back for this week against a really good matchup against Las Vegas. You got to think that after the win that they had, the Chargers are going to really try and make a playoff push now. I think this is a guy that you're going to want to pick up because even with Keenan Allen in there, he still got 10 targets and it had a huge game. I think that he could be a really good pickup for you this week.
Yeah, I agree. I like DeAndre Carter. He's a nice little sleeper option. He's usually pretty available. People aren't scooping him up, with all the news about, Allen and everybody coming back. People aren't picking Carter up. He's like the forgotten guy. He is a decent one when he plays. He just is. The problem is he is like the 4th option when everybody is there. But, he has a rapport going with Herbert for the time being. So definitely a good option for sure.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think just watch the Mike Williams. They said, even though he didn't come back in the game, that it wasn't serious. I think it was just precautionary because he did tweak it. But if he doesn't play, then this is a for sure, flex option.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go, DeAndre Carter, everybody. My next guy, Deshaun Watson.
Oh my God!
43%.
I was ready for that one.
Yeah, that is the quarterback for Cleveland. He's 43.1% rostered on ESPN. He is now eligible to play per the NFL. He will start against his old team, the Texans. The NFL just loves these little juicy matchups.
Oh, yeah, ratings, baby.
Ratings.
Totally
He's
Fuck the sexual misconduct. Ratings.
yeah, there you go. But he's been practicing with the team for the last 2 weeks, and so he's going to have a little bit of chemistry. And even though, Jacoby Brissett went out there and muscled the team, led the team, to a nice win against the Bucks, they can't wait to be like, thanks, Teddy. Here's the door. Don't let it hit you on the way out. We got our sexual misconduct guy that we want to have start for us. Thank you for all your help this year. See you later. Deshaun Watson,
a fill-in, though. He was a fill-in.
He was a fill-in, but
he's not a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, so Deshaun Watson, if he's like how he was the last time we saw him play, we're assuming he's going to be really good for the rest of the year. So, we'll see how that goes. But definitely we think good quarterback that is still pretty much in over 50% of leagues available, almost 60% of leagues available. So if you're hurting for quarterback, go check.
Yeah, man, a must add in my book.
Yeah.
I think so. I think so.
And I think if you don't have a chance at Deshaun Watson, because he is going to be like the big name, your next best option is Jared Goff, 29.2% rostered. He had 240 yards and 2 touchdowns this past week, top 10 in both passing yards and touchdowns. And Lions have the 4th easiest schedule for quarterbacks over the next 5 weeks.
There you go.
And he's gotten a lot of his players back. That makes him better. He is like an average quarterback, but with the talent around him, he looks a lot better.
Is there any news on if Jameson Williams is going to play at all this year, or they're just sitting him until next year?
Let me look it up just to make sure, but I read that it is absolutely possible that he makes his debut.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
It would be a tall order for Williams' knee to play Sunday against the Jaguars.
Okay. So maybe still another week out. But even regardless, he still has multiple of his guys coming back, which is huge.
Yeah, you got to think Amon-Ra St. Brown missed a lot of weeks.
Yep, and the off-season signing, the guy they got, Chark from Jacksonville,
DJ Chark,
missed a lot of weeks.
Yeah, he looks good.
He had a pretty decent week getting himself back together last week. So, I mean, their studs are coming back. So, yeah, the Lions. They're gonna be that spoiler team. They're here the rest of the year. They'll knock somebody out of that wild card spot just for shits and gigs. Like,
well, they obviously have the ability to do it. We watched them for how many weeks have the number one scoring offense.
They've been in every game, dude.
Absolutely, they have. It's just been rough for them, just rough. Which I'd rather get blown out than have the season that they're having, because that's just, I don't know. I feel like every single week you have your heart just torn out and stomped on, and then you're like, next week, we might do it. Oh, nope, same thing.
Yeah, I mean, they can only hope to, you can't play the Bears every week,
Unfortunately, not
3 games out from a wild card spot, so they just need to start going on a win streak here, and they have the offense that could do it. So.
I feel like they could. They just have to outscore people, but we've seen offensive battles. I mean, that's exactly what last year in the playoffs. That's exactly what Buffalo and Kansas City was. It was an offensive shootout to the very end through overtime. So I think they could do it. It's just a matter of Goff's got to be able to throw the ball well, like he was doing at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and the offensive line at least is healthy. So I mean, that's the main thing. They have one of the best not as much talked about thing as their offensive line is like top 5 in the league and at every position.
Sure.
So I mean, that's pretty crazy.
For sure.
My last one. So I always do a defense or a kicker. Little difficult to find who I was going to do this week, but I ended up going with Minnesota's defense. Only 27.6% rostered according to ESPN. Really underrated. They've been a pretty solid fantasy defense. I think they only have 2 negative games through the year. The biggest one they had was against Dallas, where they were like -8 or something like that. Dallas absolutely trounced them. But if you take out that Dallas game, they've had their last 5 games, they've had 9 points, 8 points, 10, and then 6, with also 2 defensive touchdowns within those past 3 games. They've had 2 defensive touchdowns. I think that's a save enough, especially with their schedule coming up. They are home versus the New York Jets. Then they're at Detroit, home versus Indianapolis. After that, home versus the Giants, at Green Bay, and then at Chicago. They're possibly a team that you could take them at least for maybe the next 3 weeks, kind of lock up into your lineup. I think going against the teams that they're going to go against, they're good enough to where I think that you could probably lock them against those guys and not have to worry about streaming them, especially through the first few rounds of the playoffs.
Yeah, I definitely would start them against Indy. I'd start them Indy on the rest of the year. I don't know. Jets worry me a little bit, but I don't know. Maybe they'll be good enough to stop Mike White, the Mike White show.
I don't know. Everyone's saying Mike White, dude. The reason I don't have Mike White on this list is because he went up against the dreadful Chicago Bears defense. I mean, we got to see him against a defense that is not, just mush on the ground. I mean, they played like they were Jello.
Yeah, I mean, three of their four best defensive players were didn't start, and then they lost their fourth best in Eddie Jackson, in the second quarter or third quarter or something.
Exactly. It was a rainy day. It was a cold day. New York style football. I'm still taking Minnesota's defense against.
I tell
Mike
you
White.
what, that Jack Sanborn though, that guy can play football.
Oh my god.
You just need a Jack Sanborn at every position, and you're going to the Super Bowl.
Nobody's going to know who that is.
And I don't know, that Trevor Simeon, he can throw the rock.
Oh my god!
Thank you, Chicago fan. Okay, that's enough from Chicago fan. He can go.
Oh my god!
Oh my god!
But yeah, that Green Bay matchup, I definitely would start the Minnesota because that could be a Jordan Love start. I don't know if Aaron Rodgers plays the rest of the year.
We're going to talk about him in the injuries segment, which is after the surprises of the week.
Yeah. So stay listening for that injury news, everybody.
Stay tuned. I know everyone's on the edge of their seat waiting for that one.
Yeah.
But with that...
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
Thanks, Palpy. So my surprise, I got Miles Sanders this week for the Eagles, rushing for 143 yards, 21 carries, and 2 touchdowns, 28 fantasy points. Had a really good game. Definitely the LeGarrette Blount player of the week.
Roll another blunt.
So good job, Miles. I know everybody every running back tries to earn that soundbite every week, so he earned it this week.
I know I know they're all really worried about it. I'm sure.
Yeah. He listens.
He was a monster, man, absolute monster against the Packers. I mean, it was a great game, back and forth, offensive shootout. But I mean, Miles Sanders, he couldn't be stopped. On one of his touchdown runs, he had 4 different people that had arms around him, and he escaped from every single one of them to run it in for like a 20-yard touchdown. He was really good. Are we
done kind of for the last 4 years? I feel like every year I've heard the Green Bay Packers got a great defense, and then they go out and give up 30 points in the first week. They get drafted every year because there's always the write-ups every year since 2019. Oh, Green Bay's defense, they're going to be top 5.
Yeah.
I don't understand the hype. I'm kind of over that though. That whole thing. They had a lot. They pretty much had a lot of starters out there. I know they're missing a couple guys, but they can't tackle. They can't do all the basic stuff. I'm just a little over it.
Yeah, they do have a lot of injuries, and they had a lot of guys that were kind of in and out with cramps and stuff like that during the game.
Okay.
But at the same time, they've gotten kind of trounced this year. So I think it's one of those where it definitely was a flop. And they don't deserve it, but I'm sure that they'll be in our pre-draft stuff for next year.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that ESPN article on June 15th. Oh, the Packers looking great in training camp.
It.
Defense.
Guarantee it.
All right, it's all right.
We're not salty.
My surprise of the week, Mike White. I know you guys just shit on him, but 22 for 28. 315 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think regardless of the defensive level, it's still hard to do.
Yeah.
and I was surprised. I thought it was just going to be like a low-scoring game. And yeah, it was. I mean, it was against the Bears defense, but didn't expect them to be guns blazing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I kind of thought that the writing was all on the wall. Like when like if I was gonna bet on the game, I would have bet the Jets. Once I found out that Gordon and Brisker were gonna miss the game, I was like, okay, I'm kind of out on this one. I kind of figured that they would just do whatever they wanted because they have all their guys on offense except the quarterback. They have a good offensive line, and our defensive line is just piss poor. I don't know. They can't get pressure if they just bring their 4 defensive linemen. They suck. They got a blitz. The only player, with Gordon and Brisker out that I kind of enjoy watching is the 2 linebackers, Morrow and Sanborn. I think those are really the only 2 guys on defense. And Eddie Jackson. Those are like the only guys that you got to worry about. And with only those 3 guys to worry about, you can kind of phase them out of your. You can just
you
go
can
around
impose
them.
your will.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. And
Yeah.
they have those receivers they have, that Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, Garrett Wilson, they could just, it was pretty easy for Mike White, I gotta say.
Yeah.
So, but it was impressive. I mean, 22 of 28. I mean, no matter who you play.
On a cold, rainy
Not every
day.
quarterback is doing that against the Bears, so you got to give him his due,
And on a cold and rainy day, I don't want to take away like saying that Mike White had a bad game. He had a great game. I'm just saying that I don't know that he can continue that high level continuing on. But I don't want to take away from the game that he had. He had an amazing game for the conditions that he was given. I think that he played awesome. Definitely a surprise to me.
Oh yeah.
For my surprise, I had one that's kind of the easy one of the week. I had Josh Jacobs. Man, the myth, legend. Now number 1 running back in fantasy after having a huge game, having
3
points. He is now number 1 after that.
Wow.
I mean, he was already, I think he was 4 before this week, and obviously he outran anybody who was above him. If you had him, you had it. I mean, you probably won your week, honestly, if you had Josh Jacobs in your lineup. The Las Vegas offense has looked better in this in that shootout. They've looked really good against Seattle. Regardless, I think that Jacobs is the steal of the draft at this point, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, he earned that one a little while ago. He's having an amazing year, and you got him probably 2nd or 3rd round, most likely, right?
Later, I think.
I even took him later. I think I was probably 4th or 5th round for him.
We dug it last year that he fell.
Yeah, so I mean, this is crazy. I don't know if I don't think he's ever finished in the top 5 before. So this is
4th round in 12-team leagues. That means a 10-team league is like 5th round.
Okay.
Either way, he still wasn't a 1st round pick, and he's playing as if he's a 1st round pick. And I mean, he's just playing so well. The main thing to monitor is that he came out in that 4th quarter with a calf injury. Came back into the game and obviously had like an 80-yard touchdown run to win the game for Las Vegas. Just something to monitor. He is not, which I'm going to give away a surprise, he's not on the injury report that we're about to talk about. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't monitor him through the week, because he very easily could pop up at any time.
Yeah. That's a good one. That Josh Jacobs for sure. Just surprise this week and a surprise on the year. He's a surprise all around. And it's awesome for anybody who drafted him, for sure.
Fantastic. All right.
Let's break into those injuries.
Which there's a lot. We're running through. We're going to go through fantasy relevant injuries. We got on here. I'm just going to go through just kind of, these are the basic ones, kind of saw throughout. Not necessarily all of them have huge fantasy relevance, but number 1, Aaron Rodgers. QB for Green Bay, ribs/thumb, questionable for week 13, did have an MRI today on his chest to check for any broken ribs. Matt Stafford, QB Los Angeles Rams, concussion and neck sprain is doubtful. And most likely they were saying that they might, honestly, just with the way that the Rams are playing, the fact that they're basically a really, really long shot to try and make it into the playoffs, that they might just sit him the rest of the year just to not risk him getting hurt anymore. Justin Fields for Chicago, shoulder. He is highly unlikely, is what the injury report said. They didn't want to say he's out, but highly unlikely is what I read. Damian Harris, running back for New England, thigh. He is doubtful because it is a short week. They play this Thursday. So he is doubtful for that short week. J.K. Dobbins, running back for Baltimore, some good news for his knee. He is returning to practice, still doubtful for this week, but if you kept J.K. Dobbins on your roster, maybe he returns for you next week. Hopefully, can get you some points, especially if you're struggling or it comes down to the last regular season week for fantasy to try and make the playoffs. Christian McCaffrey, which is scary. I feel like he's almost on every single one, but it's only being called quote-unquote knee irritation, according to Kyle Shanahan. He is day-to-day right now, but it doesn't seem anything more than that unless Shanahan's just downplaying it. Leonard Fournette, running back Tampa Bay, hip, he is questionable after still being out this past week as well. Elijah Mitchell, running back for San Fran, sprained MCL. He is out and probably most likely will be out for what we can imagine will be they were saying like possibly 6 to 8 weeks. If he does that, he's still going to miss almost into the playoffs. Travis Etienne, running back for Jacksonville, foot, he is probable to return, which is great for him. Michael Carter, running back for New York Jets, ankle, he is questionable. Joe Mixon, running back for Cincy, still in the concussion protocol. He is questionable to come back if he can try and clear it because he was unable to clear it for week 12. Jamar Chase, wide receiver for Cincy, shoulder and hip is now cleared to play. Most likely will play, obviously, unless he has a setback during this week in practice. Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver for Denver, ankle, he is doubtful. Mike Williams, wide receiver for Los Angeles Chargers, the same ankle. Again, we can basically assume he's probably going to be doubtful for that game, but it's something to keep an eye on, especially if you have him, or if you have any of the other Los Angeles Chargers wide receivers, or if you're going to pick up DeAndre Carter like we talked about earlier. Darnell Mooney, wide receiver for Chicago, is out for the rest of the season with season-ending ankle surgery. Allen Robinson for the Rams is out with season-ending surgery for his foot. Cooper Kupp is now out 6 to 8 weeks after he had surgery on his ankle as well. He probably will not return this season is the new thing that they are saying, obviously because the Rams are a super long shot to make the playoffs. And then Kyle Pitts. And then for Atlanta, torn MCL. He is on IR with no timetable at this point in time to when he will return. Reasonable to assume maybe they'll just sit him out the rest of the year to try and get him healthy.
Good riddance on that one.
You got to think, tight end of the future, though, they're probably just going to sit him the rest of the year. I mean,
yeah.
Even though the NFC South is still technically up for grabs, and Atlanta's still very much in the running for it, I just don't necessarily think that they bring him back for 1 or 2 games. If he even gets back off of IR on then, I don't know exactly the date they put him on IR. But anyway, I know that was
it depends on if they beat Tampa Bay this week in their first place in the division. I think that he has a chance to probably actually come back. If they're going to be playing for a playoff spot, then I think he would come back. But if they are going to lose a couple games, then I think their season's over. Then they probably just sit him.
Oh, right now, so technically he was placed on IR on the 21st of November when he was technically placed on there, but still, even according to this new article now, it's still saying there's no timetable as to when he will return and is out indefinitely unless something changes. Which just sucks because he was probably a high draft pick as far as the tight ends. Yep. We had him in the top bracket. Round
pick for me.
Yeah, we had him in the top bracket of tight ends this year. He was in the top 5 in all of our rankings, and just hasn't performed. It's disappointing. It's disappointing for him, but hopefully he can get healthy again. He'll be back next year, hopefully catching touchdowns.
Yeah, with a hopefully better quarterback than Mariota.
Yeah, maybe someone that can sling it a little better. Mariota can still run. They just can't.
Yeah, I mean, Mariota's not a terrible quarterback, but he's a bad quarterback for Pitts, I think.
Yeah, there are definitely worse quarterbacks for sure.
Yeah, I just mean he's bad for Pitts, the style of play he has.
Sure. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I know that was a lot of injuries, so I appreciate everyone sticking through it. But it seems like most of those guys were pretty fantasy relevant, so I want to make sure that I put all of them in there. All 18 are done, though. If you didn't hear a guy that's on there, I don't know what to tell you. Hopefully they're healthy, or I just missed them. Don't know what to tell you. Hit me on Twitter.
There you go. All right. So that'll do it, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave us a comment, tell us how we're doing. Leave us all your fantasy football questions. We'll definitely do our best to, we will give you an honest answer, and we'll help you out, help you with whatever questions you got, lineup questions or whatever, what have you. And then go follow us on our social media. We got Facebook, facebook.com/Garden of Sports podcast. We have Instagram, instagram.com/Garden of Sports. And we have Twitter, twitter.com/GOSpod 2021. Go follow us. It'll be super fun. And we'll catch you back here next week with a new fantasy football episode. Thank you very much, everybody.
Good luck this week, everyone. Hopefully you get a win, pushes you towards playoffs.